Hello. Hello and good afternoon. I'm Snigdha Das. I welcome you all to this special webinar by Down to Earth. It's the World Environment Day today. And as usual, we are here to discuss an issue that concerns all of us, but is rarely talked about or even acknowledged. It's the war involving wild and stray animals, not only the big ones like tigers and elephants, but also wild boar, nilgai, deer, black buck, and most damaging of all, monkeys, is happening in our backyards and in many parts of India. Farming is becoming unviable because of these animals. Over the past 6 months, Down to Earth reporters have traveled across over a dozen states to document how farmers are suffering because of this ever growing conflict. You can read our detailed analysis in Down to Earth cover story in the second edition of May. Now, while working on the story, we have observed a few trends. One, farmers are suffering heavy crop losses. It can be more than 60% overnight. In some areas, the damage is so extensive that many no longer consider it worthwhile to harvest what remains. Number two, farmers describe crop raiding as a year round cycle. Wild boar dig up fields soon after sowing is over. Stray cattle and nilgai feed on young shoots and saplings. And once fruits and grains begin to develop, monkeys, parrots, and other animals arrive to claim their share. And this happens throughout the year. As a result, and now this is the third problem, third trend that we have observed during our analysis. There is a growing indebtedness among farmers. In some areas, farmers are switching to less vulnerable crops. But remember, these are also less profitable. Some are giving up food grain cultivation altogether. Those unable to adapt are migrating in search of ways work. Some policies and schemes do exist to address the menace caused by wild animals. The center can declare specific animals as vermin, following which states can pass order to cull those animals, problem animals. Now, there are state specific schemes that offer subsidies on setting up solar powered electric fencing also, but clearly these are not helping. Now, to discuss these issues and explore possible solutions, I'm joined by my colleague Himanshu Nitanvare. Himanshu is a senior correspondent at Down to Earth and closely tracks developments related to wildlife, biodiversity, and conservation policy. Welcome, Himanshu.
Hi, good afternoon,
I'm
everyone.
also joined by Sudhir Sundriyal, a farmer from Uttarakhand. Since 2014, he has been working to revive ghost villages in the state by revitalizing agriculture. However, crop raids by wildlife are making his work impossible. Today, Sudhirji is going to share his experiences and explain the scale of the problem on the ground. Welcome, Sudhirji. Now, I'd like to
धन्यवाद।
inform our audience, Sudhirji is going to speak in Hindi. For those who may not fully understand the language, we'll share a transcript shortly after the webinar. We are also joined by Professor Milind Vatve. He's an independent researcher who has spent many years studying human-wildlife conflict and exploring practical approaches to reduce it. Today, he's going to share insights from his research and discuss possible solutions to the problem. Welcome, Milindji. We'll take questions from the audience at the end of the session. To begin with, I would like to invite Himanshu to walk us through the key findings of Down to Earth ground reporters on farmer wildlife conflict. Over to you, Himanshu.
Thank you, Signa. Good afternoon, everyone, again. And I would just walk you all through a small presentation, and after which we can move on to Sudhirji. And this is basically our coverage based on our travel that happened over a span of 6 to 8 months. Uh, so this picture particularly is from Maharashtra. It is from Zunnar, about 80 kilometers from Pune. And we thought it's an interesting picture and to be carried because these are basically animal collars with metal spikes. And these are worn by farmers just so they can protect themselves from leopard attacks when they are harvesting sugarcane. And this is ideally what is worn by dogs, but these are the farmers who thought that they should be wearing this to protect themselves. And it was also promoted by the forest department, because that is where the leopards attack near the neck when they prey. And this is the situation, and we wanted to show how grave the situation is for farmers. And I think this picture rightly represents that. Um, and this is some of our colleagues who traveled across 13 states uh, all over India, and brought us the extensive coverage and on-ground realities that we could publish in our reportage. So, what we realized and learned was this is a nationwide agrarian crisis. Uh, our coverage tells that it's a common reality, uh, and it impacts at multiple levels, because it results in falling incomes, it increases indebtedness, and just brings uncertainty. Just okay. I'm sorry, just give me a minute. I'm trying to minimize. No, I can't minimize. Sorry, guys. Oh, yeah. Mm, okay. So sorry. Yeah. So this is happening across all states, and it's recurring the crop losses. It's resulting in falling incomes and increase in indebtedness. And when we reported in December, when I went to Madhya Pradesh in Shajapur district, we went on because there was a mass translocation drive by the forest department about nilgais and black buck being transported to Kuno National Park, Gandhi Sagar National Park, as a prey. But primarily, what we found was it was the farmers who had demanded that these animals be taken away. So initially, farmers said that about 6, 7 years ago, they used to feel happy that there were like deers around the farms, and any sight of them used to make them happy. But now the population had grown so much that it became a nuisance. But along with just deer and nilgai, it was about multiple species that were foraging their farms and damaging, which included like peacock, nilgai, deer, wild boar, monkeys, and even like stray cows, which used to just trample and in their fields and sit for like half an hour, 1 hour, and then like it would flatten all the crops and young crops in many cases. Then these damages were not limited to just one season or 2 seasons particularly. It was throughout, right from the sowing uh, timing to until the harvest and peak harvest. All animals used to forage and trample or forage uh, different crops, and also like maybe one farm would be foraged or raided by multiple species at different times of the day. For example, like wild boar, farmers said that they didn't consume anything primarily, but then they would just dig up the farms, and that would ruin everything. And this situation is worsening by the day, and the damages incurred due to wildlife now amount to be the third largest after extreme weather events and low agriculture produce. So these crops that were damaged were like gram, potato, groundnut, corn, lentils, soybean. And farmers also tried switching these farms crops with other types, but it didn't work out because then there would be other species of animals that would come and forage. And this crisis has become chronic and unsustainable, and resulting in like psychological impact, apart from like the financial losses that they are incurring again and again. So what we learned was that farmers in Bihar, Odisha, Himachal Pradesh, and Madhya Pradesh, including other states, were like abandoning high value crops and shifting to less profitable ones. So that directly impacted their income, one thing, and then but also they lost the confidence to farm anymore. And like farmers in Madhya Pradesh reported losses of 40% or more, depending at what crop they are taking, what species is raiding their farms, and also like the extent of damage that they do. But like, and this would also impact their production cost and fertilizer cost, all of this. So what farmers described was like large herds of nilgai deer. So they said that maybe imagine a herd of like 20 or 40 antelopes, and they have like four legs, and so many of them multiply 40 by 4, and then these many legs are just running across their field, and that would just do a lot of damage. So there's this study from 2025 that was done by Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics, which estimated that annual agriculture losses in Maharashtra ranged from 10,000 to 40,000 crore. And Mr. Milind Vatve, that we have here, was a part of this study. He has extensively traveled across the state along with his colleagues to come up with these estimates, because these estimates were not present. And what they also found was these estimates were also an underestimate, though it's a huge amount that we see on the screen right now. And what their study also revealed was that 62% of farmers reduced cultivated area, and 54% abandoned at least one high value crop that they used to grow. As I spoke earlier, this is also impacting psychologically. For example, in Odisha's Ganjam district, frequent wild boar attacks forced farmers in several villages to collectively declare a crop holiday. So, crop holiday is something that farmers would just give up taking up a crop for that particular time of the season. It's also contributing to migration. So, in Uttarakhand, uh, the study uh, the study shows that not study the survey shows that the damage done to the crops resulted in 5.6% of migration cases, according to Uttarakhand Rural Development and Migration Prevention Commission, while in Chhatarpur of Madhya Pradesh 80% of households, at least one member migrated. It's not only the farmers, but also the people living in the vicinity that are falling prey or becoming increasingly facing human safety issues and conflict issues. So, Karnataka, for example, recorded more than 35,000 conflicts, out of which only 22,000 incidents involved elephants. As gave you an example from Zunnar in Maharashtra before, so leopard attacks are also becoming frequent. So these are the figures that there are like 768 leopard attacks recorded over the past 25 years. And we thought of coming up with how the frequency has increased. And this is what we saw is like there was just one case in 2021-22, and gradually it increased like 3 to 4 cases in between years, and by 2024-25 it was like 9 cases. And so sorry, okay. And also, so these cases of tiger, leopard, elephant, and bear attacks on people working in hay fields highlight that conflict now extends beyond just the crop losses. And uh, like the same 2026 Uttarakhand's state survey shows that 57% of wild animals now live near human settlements rather than co-forest areas. Also, there are multiple reports which tell that lions and tigers also dominate human landscapes beyond their protected areas now. What we also found was that farmers try multiple ways to mitigate this conflict. They will try to build fences around those who have the money. They will do some electrical fences, but that won't work because um, deer and ilka can just jump, and wild boar can just dig in under the fences and enter in. So these things don't work anymore, and also these methods of like making sound or distracting an animal with bells, firecrackers, crude bombs, and noise-based systems, they are no longer working. So this brings us to the question, like, why has it stopped working? Because these methods were traditional and effective before. So, what Milind Vatve's study found, and there are also multiple evidences now that loss of fear for humans by animals is one of the biggest things that have happened, and that may be a deterrent. This is also what we saw on the ground when I went to Uttarakhand in 2025 in Ramnagar district. So farmers repeatedly said that this is what they see every day, because they precisely know the human routine and behavior. So after 6 o'clock, when the farmers leave from the field, they would just come and raid on their crops and on the harvest. So this is a learned behavior, and also they know, the farmer said that they know that animals know that they will not be attacked by humans. The humans will not harm them. So that becomes more of an attraction to come to the farms and consume. Climate change is also one of the reasons. In Jammu Kashmir, warmer winters are believed to be disrupting bear hibernation cycles. So between 23-25, Asiatic black bears were allegedly responsible for 67 deaths and 940 injuries. So this is basically because of the warming conditions are disturbing the sleep cycles of bear, and because of which that is resulting in aggressive behavior of the bear, and that is what are resulting in attacks. Also, the Maharashtra study found that 25% of affected farmers sought compensation, but only 1 to 2% received payments. So, not what like I also went through multiple studies, and what these studies also show that uh, okay, all of these things are happening, but what happens to the loss? Can this be recovered in some way? But not all attacks are reported by farmers, and not all attacks can be measured in terms of financial loss. That is also what the government officials face. And also, uh, different animals are often given different weightage. So if a damage is done by an elephant in the south, then that would probably get more weightage than what a damaged wild boar does. So that discrepancy, or that uh, biasness is also seen, what the research observes. So what is the government doing about it? So from 2026 Kharif season, animal-related crop losses have been brought under Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, with a drone-based verification proposed for claim settlements. But we don't have enough information on how it is being translated on ground. But we do have evidence from Milind Vatve's study, and also other studies, that how effective these state level compensations are also working. And now there's increasing demand from multiple states that these wild animals should be declared vermin, and there should be some action, some extreme action that needs to be taken. So in 2016, Uttarakhand and Maharashtra uh, demanded wild boars to be culled to some extent to resolve this crisis and bring relief to farmers. Same was done by Himachal Pradesh for monkeys, and in Gujarat for nilgai. Last year in Kerala, the state government applied to the union government asking it to be declared as vermin, wild boar as vermin, but it was denied. So then it came up with its own policy or legislation that they would do take up culling for at least a year, and this was extended in 2026 for a few more months. So this this increasing demand is also what resonates with Milind Vatve's study, and what he also believes that we need a more scientific and well calibrated culling to restore fear or instill fear among animals for humans. And that will probably act as a deterrent, because this is what traditionally used to happen. And also, experts and scientists that we have also documented in our report says that conservation basically limited to protected areas and within the protected areas. But now that these wild animals are venturing out and living very prominently in human dominated landscapes, they need to be considered as well for conservation. And I think this is what our report has is primarily, and I think Sudhirji can come in and speak more and share his experiences on the ground. Sudhirji, sorry, Snigdha, can you please speak?
Yeah, I would like to invite Sudhirji, but before that, I would also like to add a few more examples to what Imanshu just said. So we received very interesting examples from, shocking examples rather, from Odisha's Ganjam district that Imanshu had mentioned. It's a coastal belt where people have been traditionally growing paddy. But because of these repeated attacks by wild boar and black buck, they have shifted to kevda, like they just stopped growing paddy altogether and they have shifted to kevada. And it's not a trend that was decided because of the market intervention or market any kind of profit. It was purely because they could not stand the repeated attacks by the wild animals. There is this other reportage that we received from Chhatarpur district of Madhya Pradesh, where farmers, they have now, where this is a rainfed area where farmers completely depend on rabi crops for a little bit of profit that they can make. And peas have been a cash crop there. Now they have also stopped growing peas altogether. So this is where I would like Sundari Alvi to come and tell us, as a farmer, you have first-hand experience of these crop raidings by animals. So please tell us about the crisis, the extent of the losses, and also, do you feel that attacks have increased in recent years when you compared कि आपके बचपन में कितने attacks होते थे? If you can tell us everything. Sudhir ji, my questions are clear, right? आप unmute कर लीजिए एक बार.
जी 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 जी। सभी दर्शकों को मेरा हाँ जी, सभी दर्शकों को मेरा नमस्कार।
बोलिए सुधीर जी, आपका वॉइस आ रहा है.
आज की में उत्तराखंड में अगर देखा जाए तो वन्य जीव का जो संकट है वो बहुत ही गंभीर है, बहुत ही बड़ा संकट है। वो संकट इस पैमाने पे है।
No, I think Sudhir got disconnected. He told me before the webinar started there was some. Okay, he's back. Yeah. सुधीर जी, आप अपना वीडियो ऑफ करके बोल सकते हैं. आई अंडरस्टैंड वहां पे कुछ मौसम का प्रॉब्लम है, आज आप बता रहे थे मुझे. वीडियो ऑफ करके बोलिए.
तो जी 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 हाँ, जी जी। बहुत बड़ा संकट यह संकट इतना गंभीर दिखता है कि अब हम फसल की बात तो नहीं कर रहे हैं, हम बात कर रहे हैं कि किस तरह से अपनी जान बचाई जाए। फसल हानि से अपनी है, लोगों ने छोड़ दिया है, लोगों ने मुर्गी की पालन छोड़ दिया है। और ये घटना है कि गुलदार जो तें हेलो, हाँ जी, हेलो।
हाँ सुधीर जी बताएं, प्लीज कंटिन्यू।
जी, हाँ, आवाज आ रही है मेरी? बीच में-
सुधीर जी आपका जो वॉइस है वो ब्रेक कर रहा है, आप एक बार डिस्कनेक्ट कर लीजिए। इन द मीन वाइल आई रिक्वेस्ट डॉक्टर मिलिंद वापवे to tell us about his extensive research that he has conducted on the complex.
Yeah.
Milind ji,
Hello.
can
Yeah.
you please comment?
Yeah. So, hello. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes.
Well, I have been interested in this problem right from 2007, 2008. And I worked more in Eastern Maharashtra, Chandrapur district, and which has been today the most important, the worst scenario for human-wildlife conflict. But when I started working in Tadoba in 1997, Tadoba tigers were called gentleman tigers. Okay, because there was not a single incident of any human attack, any conflict, right? So from gentleman tigers, today, this single district has maximum number of human attacks by tigers, right? So this means that in 30 years, the situation had changed dramatically. Okay, and there are several reasons for this. But it is not only tiger attack. See, people talk about tiger attack. It catches media attention. But more than carnivores, the herbivore conflict is more serious. The attack on crops is much more economically, uh, say 100 times more serious than attack on on livestock. Attacks on humans are only occasional. They are serious, no doubt, but they take away the entire media attention. Okay, so I'm going to tell you that no, focus on crop breeding, because for farmers this is extremely serious, and we are not taking it sufficiently seriously. Okay, so there are a number of things. The problem is complex. There is no doubt that the crop loss is increasing exponentially, and we estimated it now. This is the first time that the net agricultural loss has been estimated. People have been talking about human-wildlife conflict all around the world, globally. In 2023, IUCN had a worldwide conference. Next year, again, 2027, they have another. So there you see that they collected data from the entire world, but there is no single case where methodologically crop damage was estimated. Okay, so this has been a sort of orphan problem, because neither wildlife researchers nor agriculture researchers seem to own that. Agricultural people say, though, this is a wildlife problem, this is not our problem. Wildlife people say this is agriculture, this is not. So it has been an orphan problem. So ours was the first attempt to carefully, economically estimate how much is the loss, and it is tremendous. Okay, as Himanshu said right in the beginning, for Maharashtra alone, it is in multiples of 10,000 crores per year. Okay, for other states, even if that much data are not available. So there is no doubt that the loss is big and farmers are suffering. Now, in legally, on paper, the farmers can be compensated. Okay, so the law enables compensation in India, but the problem is there is no system in place. There is no protocol. There is a protocol which is not practicable. Okay, so the farmers try to avoid this because there is too much of bureaucracy. too much of expense to claim, and ultimately nobody knows how to estimate how much is the loss. Then there is a confusion about whether it is an ex gratia payment or whether it's a compensation. Okay. Now it is a compensation by law, which means that whatever the damage is, the entire thing needs to be compensated. Ex gratia payment is a sort of some humanitarian help for the farmers. That is not the law. The law says compensation, not ex gratia payment. Okay, so it is the right of the farmer to get compensated, but that is not happening at all. Not even 1% of the loss is getting compensated. So the first thing that needs to be done is to revise this compensation procedure, make it realistic. Okay. Now, how to do this? Researchers have worked on it. Okay. Alternative plans, alternative protocols by which the compensation can be made realistic have been suggested, they have been experimented on. There is theoretical analysis, there are pilot scale experiments. It has been shown that it works. So the alternatives are there. Okay, and it can be made technology intensive so that it can work like your UPI system or your credit card system, right? Or your Aadhaar card. Now, these things are examples where technology has worked on a nationwide scale with good amount of success. There might be a few attempts of fraud, but overall these things have been successful. An equally robust system can be built. Okay, so researchers have done the groundwork so that such a system can be built. Now what we need is political will. Okay, if political will is there, a robust technology-based system can be built by which farmers can be realistically compensated. Now, compensation is not the ultimate solution, but it is the immediate relief. Okay, so that is the first thing that needs to be done. Second, when the compensation is realistic, you will keep on getting realistic data. Okay, and that data is important because, see, hunting is necessary. Some states have started killing, but how much to hunt? That should be based on data. Now, data on animal populations in the huge country is impossible. See, animal populations are monitored in protected areas, inside sanctuaries and national parks. That is feasible. Monitoring animal populations throughout the country, open, outside the national parks, is just not possible. But monitoring damage is possible, right? And unless you have a monitoring system, you won't be able to decide how much to cull or how much to capture, how much to relocate. Unless there is data, nothing is possible. So compensation can give you the required database on which you can take decisions or whether culling is required, whether hunting or relocation is required, how many need to be hunted, when to stop. Okay, all these needs a continually updated data, and compensation is where you will get this data. Okay, so the compensation is the first thing that needs to be done. But ultimate solution is not compensation. Ultimate solution is to manage the animals. Manage the population of animals, manage the behavior of animals is the ultimate solution. This ultimate solution needs changes right from the top, and I suspect the wildlife protection law will have to be changed in a number of ways in order to make it a long-term sustained conservation, right? So this law was made as a as a crisis, okay, at a crisis time. That is not the case. Now, in 50 years, the context had changed substantially. The law was made in the 1970s in the context that was there prevalent that time. Now, since the context had changed, the management has to change, which has not happened. Okay, so now we need to recognize what is the change, and accordingly, the law will have to be updated. Now, what is the need for updating? The need is that it is not only the population of animals that is to be monitored, the behavior of animals is changing and that needs to be monitored. Okay. Science, whatever science was available in the 1970s, the laws were made based on those sciences. Now we have 50 years of efforts where there is more data collection, more studies on animal behaviors, more studies, more scientific principles that have come out, not only from India, experiences from Africa, experiences from Europe, experiences from Japan. For example, Japan recently had bear attacks. Okay, many incidents of bear attacks. So what they did and what is their experience is also important for us to consider in India. Different countries have different policies, and a comparative analysis of which policies work in what way will be helpful for India as well, right? So this needs huge amount of research that will take a long time, but the first thing that will immediately give relief to farmers is compensation protocols. We need to revise the compensation protocols and see that they work efficiently and realistically. And that is not too tough because researchers have already shown what is wrong. They have already worked on alternatives. Okay, and the alternatives are likely to work provided there is a political will that yes, we need a change in this.
Is that all, Dr. Vathve?
Yeah, of course, any questions, any discussion that continues, I'll be happy to contribute.
Yeah. So, Dr. Vathve, your research is particularly focused on the changing behavior of animals,
Yes.
which Himanshu also highlighted. So, would really like you to focus on that.
Yeah. So, see, there are old hunting stories right from Jim Corbett and so on. Okay, so they have described animal behavior, and then we took that as the default animal behavior. Okay, but animal behavior is flexible. They change. The behavior is partly genetic, partly culturally inherited, partly optimized to their surroundings, and animal behavior is quite flexible, right? So what Jim Corbett described is not entirely applicable to what we see today. So the reason why animal behavior has changed is because human behavior towards animals had changed. The two are interdependent. The main thing of importance is the blanket ban on hunting of so many species. Okay, and because of the blanket ban, the human fear or human avoidance behavior, which everyone had assumed that is natural to animals, is changing. Okay, it is not natural to animals. It is there because the risk of being hunted was there. Right? Now, once that has lifted, and not for a small time, for 5 decades, okay, the pressure of hunting has reduced. May not have gone 100%, but has reduced substantially. There is no doubt about it. Okay, because of that, the fear of humans is vanishing very rapidly. Now, as compared to forage in the wild and crops on the agricultural land, see, crops are the species that we have chosen for better nutrient content. And then for generations together, we have been selectively breeding better species, better varieties to give more nutrients, more grain, uh, more sugar or carbohydrate content, or more protein or whatever. Right? Now, if it is good for us to eat, it would be good for them to eat as well. Right? But crops were not the main food of animals, mainly because they were avoiding humans. Okay. Now, if that human avoiding behavior vanishes, then they will prefer eating crops than eating the wild forage. Okay. Not 100%. They need a mixed diet because different kinds of diets are different in different nutrition contents, but their preference to crops will increase as they lose human behavior. This is bound to happen. This is not freak. Okay, happens by the laws of nature, by the laws of animal behavior. And therefore, This is the major concern. The major cause why animals are coming on crops is the rapid reduction in human fear. It is not because forests are getting destroyed. Well, habitat destruction is a serious problem, no doubt. Habitat restoration is required, no doubt, but that is not the cause why animals are coming on crops. Animals are coming on crops because crops are nutritious. They were not coming earlier so much because of human fear. Now, human fear being vanishing rapidly, it is imperative that they will come and feed on crops. So hunting has to return. Okay. For good wildlife management, hunting has to return because hunting has been a key issue in human-nature relations for millennia. Okay. Now, we banned hunting, and that was proper because that was a kind of disaster management required in the 1970s. Right? But disaster management plan cannot be all-time plan. It is only for disaster. Now, the disaster having reduced for several species, may not be for 100% species. For species which are still endangered, we need more strict laws. But for species whose population is reviving, it has saturated the existing reserve forest and it is coming out. Now there needs to be a fundamental change in management, which requires a fundamental change in law. Okay, just declaring some species or removing some species from Schedule 1, Schedule 2, or declaring vermin or not is not enough. It has to be looked holistically as a management problem. Okay, just giving permission hunting is not enough. See, farmers are not equipped with guns, right? There needs to be a system that takes care of it. Before that, you need to know how many animals need to be killed, where, in what way, what system of hunting needs to come. Just giving permission is not the solution, or just removing one animal from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2 is not the solution. The entire system will have to be worked out at managerial details.
Milinji, you also said in our Anil Agarwal dialogue that agriculture also precisely became possible because hunting was also part of it. So
Yes,
can
of
you just
course.
elaborate
Yes, yes.
quickly on that?
Yeah, yeah. If you go to human history, then hunting precedes human cultural development. Hunting precedes human settlement. Hunting precedes the beginning of agriculture. And that is because only when humans became a predominant species and feared species, that settlement was possible, that agriculture was possible, right? If humans were not hunters, you can imagine that the primitive people, grow a crop, and then wild boar comes and eats it in a day. See, that is not possible unless animals avoid coming to your farms. Beginning of agriculture was just not possible. So hunting has been the key to human cultural development. Not only that, the balance between human nature association is also dependent on hunting. Okay, so the total ban on hunting as a disaster management was okay for a few decades. It cannot continue like that forever.
Thank you, Professor Millen. So we are now foraying into a debate where it shouldn't be either conservation or farmers' livelihood. We need to maintain that balance. We need to figure out how we can coexist, how humans can coexist with wildlife. Now, Himanshu, you have also analyzed a lot of studies and you have also spoken to various other experts. What have you understood? What is the possible solutions? Anything else that you would like to add to what Dr. Milin has already said?
Yes, thank you, Sagna. So what we have learned is that and also what Milinji rightly pointed out, that conservation has to go beyond protected areas. We cannot just limit our conservation to wildlife areas, and we need to consider the populations that are increasingly growing and dominating human landscapes. So, for example, in Pilibhit, we call tigers as sugarcane tigers, and in Junnar, we call them as sugarcane leopards, because for generations, leopards have not seen forests, and they've always born and brought up and also uh, preyed on cattle. So that is what a new setup looks like, and I think we need to consider those populations, and there are no real estimates all the time because these are not monitored, and we really need to take our conservation in human dominated areas that these wildlife live now. And of course, as what Vijay said, that we need technological solutions. We need data. We need information. So unless we have this information and data that comes through us, and we will not be able to make those policy decisions that are required. And every state has different methodologies and different ways of dealing with this, but then we don't have a national policy that would take care of this. And so we would really like to have that. I think at this point, that is what the experts say.
Thank you, Himanshu. So I see we don't have too many questions here, but do write to us if you have any questions. We'll try to respond to your queries, and we would also try that Dr. Milind responds to your queries if there is any specific one addressed to him.
Sure.
So what we understand from this
Signa, I
discussion
think we
is
have
that,
some
yes,
questions here.
we have.
Yeah, some
Okay,
in the chat box.
we see. Yeah, there is one on. I would like to ask what could be the potential policies and measures that the government should be taking to support farmers? Also, do you have any data where it is mentioned how many farmers have been affected and how much death is due to these attacks across India? What's lacking in the government policies?
Yeah. So, is it visible on the?
It's visible on the chat box if you can access.
Yeah, but there are too many things. Okay.
Okay.
So I will try to answer as I remember your question, because there are too many questions in one. Yes. So policy is something that we have been working on. The first thing I mentioned is the first relief is make the compensation protocols farmer friendly and easy and practicable and realistic, right? That is the first thing that needs to be done. The second is wherever the conflict is too serious, okay, you need to kill or remove the animals immediately. This is again a short-term solution, right? But in the long run, the philosophy behind conservation policy will have to change. Okay, in the long run, animal species are important, animal population is important, animal genetics is important. Okay, so these are the ecological factors. What is happening now is we are mixing up ecological factors with things like compassion, ahimsa, and things like that, right? These two are different things. These are different values. These are values of human society. They are not the fundamental principles on which nature works. Okay, so ecological management should be primarily based on the laws of nature, not the laws of human society. Okay, and therefore, if you have to manage a population by killing a few animals, that is an ecological solution that will have to be decided carefully. That will have to be based on data, not someone's whim suddenly that, oh, go and kill. No, it has to be based on science. Okay, but science exists, methods of science exist. So we need to employ them and take decision based on the principles of biology, principles of ecology. And then whenever permits, principles of compassion and humanitarian grounds will be there. But if there is a direct conflict between the two, so for example, there are too many instances of human killing. You suspect a man-eater, right? Now, killing the man-eater is the first thing that is required. Okay, and there is no doubt about it. Now, because there have been many heated debates about this, right? Now, why do you have to kill man-eaters? Why can't you capture them and send them and keep them in captivity? Now, captivity is not a humanitarian solution. I don't believe that. Okay, captivity is also painful to animals just as it will be to you, right? So avoiding killing is not a humanitarian solution, right? And then humanitarian solutions are mainly have evolved for human societies. When it is managing nature, principles of biology, principles of ecology are the first concern. Compassion comes with that whenever there is no conflict between the two. Okay, but if there is a direct conflict between the two, we have to go by ecological principles first. Now, if this is accepted as a policy principle, policies can easily evolve through this. Right now, there is a confusion between the two. Are we conserving animals for ecological reason or for some ahimsa principles? Okay, if you can sort this out correctly, then the policy will evolve like in no time.
Yeah, thank you. There is one interesting question for you, Dr. Milind,
Yes.
from Harish Walke.
Yes.
So what he is asking is it alone loss of fear or also less of nutritional food availability in forests, deforestation, adding to the complexity? Very interesting.
Yes.
Please.
So we have been writing about this, using data, using mathematics, and so on. Right. So there are four major factors: the nutritional content inside a forest, the nutritional value of the crops. Okay, that is number two. The cost that they have to pay for coming out. Okay, or for using the crops. So, for example, if you make fences, then they have to pay, then they have more difficulty of crossing that. Okay, so the cost increases. And the fourth is the risk, the fear that you might get killed, right? These are the four factors. All the four factors are important, but fear is the most important thing, right? If fear goes to zero, all other measures of mitigation just don't work. You need a minimum threshold level of fear, and in that situation, increasing the quality of habitat in the wilderness will work. Making fences will work. Even your scarecrows will work, or other deterrents will work. Okay. None of these things work if fear goes to zero. Right. So that fear is important. And once a minimum threshold level of fear is there, the other mitigation measures will work. Okay. It makes sense that you keep the habitat in a good shape. Okay, the nutritional content of the habitat should be good. All this is important, but that makes sense when there is a minimum threshold fear existent.
Thank you, Dr. Milind. Let me take another question by Dipali Semwal, who is asking, acknowledging the complexity of the problem, I'm wondering from the ethics lens, if there is a pathway where we can minimize the loss of life of both humans and non-humans.
Correct. A very good question. So in the current work that is slightly mathematical, slightly technical, so I will not go into it. It is yet to be published. It is in the final stages of making. What we show is when there is an optimum level of fear, you can sustain maximum population with minimum conflict. Okay, so that fear factor actually helps you having a larger population existing with minimum number of attacks both ways. Minimum number of people being killed by animals and minimum number of animals being killed by humans. Okay, so fear is the key to this as well. And this is not new. Okay, see, so far, right now there is a ill-perceived concept in people that there is something different which is called natural habitat and something different which is human landscape. This is a modern phenomenon. Throughout human history, the two were always intermixed in a mosaic. Right? Farms were surrounded by forests. Animals were living around human habitation all the time. In my childhood, I have seen leopards or signs of leopard just going a little bit away from the city, a little bit on the outskirts of the city. Leopards were there around Pune. Okay. So this has been the situation all the time. It is only recently that we have sort of trying to segregate the two. The two were always mixed. The two were always in the vicinity of each other. Okay. And they always lived with minimum conflict because they were avoiding direct confrontation with each other. Right? When that avoidance behavior is lost, there is more and more conflict.
Now, there is a question from Kabir Singh, who wants to know your views on the removal of vermin category from WLPA.
Well, I'm saying that we need to remove WLPA itself and replace it by a more sound for today's context. Okay, WLPA was sound for 1970s context. Now the context has changed, so we need an entirely new WLPA.
So we have SS-based. I'll just let me take this up. He's asking, this question is for you, Dr. Wadhwe. So he's saying hunting was permissible in Wildlife Act in 1972. It was banned in 91. The act has been amended many times, but the very little of the original act remains. Hunting for managing human-wildlife conflict has been permitted in the subsequent years, but it has not helped. And so permitting culling may not be an efficient way of solving the conflict. That is his opinion. So it's meant to you. So yeah, anything you want to say here?
Yeah, so I made a simplistic version. I say when I said the 1972 Act, I'm aware that it has changed. It has amended a little bit. In the 1990s, actually, it became stricter. Okay, which is true. But then you will realize that the real conflict started by late 90s. Okay, and the farmer problem intensified in the last 15 years or so. This is after having banned hunting for a sufficiently long time that the change is seen. Well, in the short run, hunting does not help. Okay, because animals took substantial time to lose the fear. They will take substantial time to reinstate that back, right? So immediately, if you start hunting and expect that the problem will be gone, it will not be gone immediately. And therefore, the immediate solution is compensation. That has to be there. Compensation gives you some relief and some time for you to think and experiment and see what works and what not. Until then, the farmers can live if the compensation protocol is good, efficient.
One last question that I'm going to take is from Renu Kumari, who wants to know, could we train local people or farmers on how to handle wild animals when they enter into the fields without harming our animal or get harmed by animals? And could we seek any such support from Forest Department or Wild Reserve staff?
Okay. See, this was already there 100 years ago and we lost it. Okay, people knew how to handle animals. Now, without harming them, as I said, it is not always possible. Because, see, if you accept that tigers hunting deer is natural for tigers, okay, then if you look at human evolution, humans hunting animals is also natural for humans. Overhunting was the problem. Okay, there is a natural limit for hunting. Both human population increased and there was overhunting in the British period as well as the early days of post-independence, right? That overhunting was a problem. Similarly, complete ban on hunting is a problem on the other side. Okay, humans are hunting animals, but all hunting communities, like there is a Pardi community, there are some tribal communities which were traditional hunters. They had their own rules of hunting, right? They were hunting seasons. They would avoid hunting during the breeding season. They would avoid hunting a female. They would avoid hunting a lactating female or a gravid female. In fact, killing a gravid female will be considered as a sin. Okay, so people had this knowledge and this culture by which they could hunt and still avoid making the species extinct. Okay, you conserve the species as well as do some hunting, provided there are restrictions on hunting by the hunting culture itself. The hunting culture changed during the British time, right? And let us not go into the entire details of the history, but there was overhunting, and that overhunting was certainly bad. The overhunting led to so many ecological stresses. It led to collapse of forests. It led to collapse of wildlife. So that overhunting is something that has to be avoided in all cases. Hunting by itself is not the problem. Overhunting was the problem during that time. So now when I said hunting has to be back, again carefully to see that you don't go to the overhunting era again. Therefore, the culture of hunting, the restrictions on hunting, a system of hunting is extremely important.
Thank you. That's quite insightful. Himanshu, would you like to add anything to this before we conclude the webinar?
No, I think Mr. William has covered all very extensively, and I think the questions from the audience made sure that it added more depth. So yeah, I think thank you.
That's great. So what we understand is that this growing conflict is like also in part of a consequence of a successful wildlife protection that has increased animal numbers, but this cannot be an excuse to look away from the plight of our farmers. So there is a clear consensus that conservation policy must move beyond just protection, and that we must learn how to balance wildlife protection with farmers' livelihoods. I hope today's discussion is both informative and inspiring and will lead to some meaningful policy level action. Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you.